Hey guys, welcome back to Narnia Lore for another exciting What If episode. This is kind of a hard episode for me to bring to you guys because Susan's my girl. So I'm like, yeah, this is difficult for me to give you guys. But here we go. Hope you guys enjoy. So as we know, in The Horse and His Boy, Prince Rabadash was madly infatuated with Queen Susan, and when he had discovered she was gone, he formed a plan to get her back. And in this timeline, he succeeded. Arriving back in Tashbaan, the young prince couldn't help but feel a sense of pride as he galloped through the streets with his prized queen, who was bound hand and foot and uncomfortably draped over the back of a horse. Arriving back at his palace, he ordered his men to lock Susan in some comfortable quarters while he went and met with his father. Striding confidently into the Tisrock's council chambers, Rabadash gleefully informed his father of his successful mission.
"You foolish boy! What in the name of Tash has possessed you, father? Did I not do it exactly as I said? Furthermore, I rode into battle with your blessing, and now you resort to abuse? If you had taken but a little more time in your preparations, oh my son, you would know that even as we speak, the High King is on his way back to Cair Paravel from battling the Northern Giants. With such an outrage, he will undoubtedly launch an attack on Tashbaan. When I gave you my blessing, there was but a small seed of doubt in my mind, but I can clearly see now that I should have listened to that seed of doubt, as it would have saved many lives. The blood of this city lies on your hands."
And with that, the Tisrock left the council chambers, leaving a confused, angry, and rather pouty Rabadash. This was the last time anyone ever saw the Tisrock. It was said that he fled in fear of his life and died in the wilderness of Calormen. Back at Cair Paravel, Peter had finally returned and heard Edmund explain what had happened. Calmly, Peter and Edmund gathered their generals and formed a strategy. Messengers were sent out to Anvard asking for King Lun's aid. King Lun gladly agreed to help as Archenland was itching to teach Calormen a lesson after their attack on Anvard the day before. King Lun took his generals and met with the Narnian kings, and the Narnians explained to them their strategy. They agreed that King Lun would take his army on a mad dash across the desert, similar to what Rabadash had done. This was to distract from the main attack that the Narnians would launch by sea. They would have a squadron of fawns flown into the Calormen shipyards by griffins. There, the fawns would set the Calormen ships ablaze so that they couldn't combat the Narnian navy. The Narnian army was split into two task forces, one led by the High King, the other led by King Edmund. Queen Lucy would stay at Cair Paravel to reign. King Edmund's task force would directly assault Tashbaan from the sea, while the High King would land his troops further down the coast, then attack Tashbaan from the rear. This would have the city covered on all sides and would force a speedy surrender. Back in Tashbaan, Rabadash spent the next few hours pacing up and down the council chambers, absolutely regretting his life choices up to this point. Finally, he ordered his men to bring Susan into the council chambers. They did so, and when she was there, Rabadash ordered the guards to leave them. Once they were behind closed doors, Rabadash did something that completely shocked Susan. Rabadash looked her straight in the eye and said, "My queen, I am sorry." Susan stood speechless as Rabadash continued. "I've been selfish, unkind, and pig-headed overall. I shouldn't have done what I did, and I beg for your forgiveness. If it pleases you, I will attempt to appeal to your brother, the High King, and to King Lun, to do whatever it takes to make this right again. I only wanted you to be happy, but my selfishness does not accomplish that." With that, Rabadash left the room. Back at Anvard, King Lun and his men departed, riding as fast as they could towards Tashbaan. As the moon rose, it stretched its light across the sand, casting eerie shadows on the ground. As the Archenland cavalry thundered closer to Tashbaan, they could see that there were many fires lit all across the city, and a great ruckus traveled through the air. King Lun wondered if the attack had been compromised, forcing the Narnians to attack early. But as they drew closer, the Calormens peaceably beckoned the Archenlanders into the city. Still on their guard, King Lun led his men into the city, where they were met by the High King and King Edmund. The two brothers assured King Lun that it was quite all right and that Rabadash wanted to speak with them all peaceably. Being the noble and courteous kings they were, all three met with Rabadash, where he gave them his sword, a symbol of surrender. He then proceeded to tell them what he had told Susan earlier that day. Rabadash said he would gladly repay them all any amount in order to settle the damages that had been done. King Loon kindly requested that Rabadash provide men and supplies to repair Anvard. Rabadash, of course, agreed to this and said he would replenish Anvard fourfold, and then went on further to offer the Narnians his best warships and war horses. The three kings gladly accepted Rabadash's apology and gifts and sincerely thanked him for coming around and making things right. Rabadash then, who had recently been appointed Tizrock at this time because of his father's disappearance, wrote a peace treaty between Calormen, Archenland, and Narnia. The kings signed the treaty and soon left the city peaceably. Queen Susan was extremely impressed by Rabadash's humbled attitude and eventually accepted his marriage proposal. The wedding was held in Tashbaan several months later, and the ceremony was unlike anything anyone had ever seen at the time. Rabadash and Susan were happily married and reigned for 75 years until his death at the age of 107. A year later, Susan herself passed on at the age of 106. Their reign was considered the golden age of Calormen, and their children continued to keep the peace with both Narnia and Archenland. So what do you guys think of this? I think this fanfiction turned out quite nice compared to my other darker fanfictions. It's definitely a nice break from that. But as always, please leave your thoughts in the comments down below, and I'll get to them as soon as I can. Also, as always, if you have any suggestions on what you want to see next, please let me know. And if you are not already, please consider subscribing and go ahead and hit that like button. I will see you all next time, the next episode of Narnia Lore.